If you were concerned about knowing how to split the assets and debts between the different marital property regimes, don't stress, this is not rocket science. If you go to university or if you attend a postgrad course, expect to spend days or weeks on this. You don't actually need to. It's very, very simple. So this particular slide is available as a PDF on our website. And what you can do is, if you're like me and you like your technology, keep it on Google Drive or somewhere on the cloud, and you can access it from your cell phone or from your iPad or tablet. Even in a divorce, you don't need to memorize any of this stuff. And we are going to work through this table later in a practical exercise. So what this table shows us is all the different aspects, items that we need to somehow fit into different pigeonholes with each of these different types of marital property regimes. We're going to take a look at in community of property. That's our very first one there. Next to it, out of community of property. Then next to it, out of community of property, subject to the accrual system before 1st of November 1984. So in other words, for marriages concluded before that date. And then next to it, for marriages concluded after that date. And lastly, the misnomer of a common law marriage. Let's take a look at the first one there. Assets or liabilities acquired before the marriage. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Anything that the parties got or got themselves into before they got married. If the parties are married in community of property, that's going to immediately go into the joint estate. What is a joint estate? Very, very shortly, imagine a kind of pot where we add everything that the parties bring into this pot, and when they get divorced, we split it straight down the middle. You get half, you get half. Okay. Well, actually, I think let's move through it by marital property regime. So in community of property, what goes into the pot is anything the parties had or owed before the marriage, as well as what they acquired or debts that they made during the marriage. And also, if a gift or inheritance is given to either of the two parties before the marriage with no conditions, then it goes into the pot. So Bob's mom dies. She leaves him a beautiful diamond ring. No conditions, goes straight into the pot. However, if she leaves it in her will on the condition that this ring will only ever be Bob's, it will never ever form part of any joint estate, then that's exactly what we're going to do. And that's also how the courts recognize it. Same goes for gifts or inheritances during the marriage. So before and during the marriage is exactly the same. And the last one there, a delictual claim between the parties. Well, this is a bit of an interesting one. So let's assume that there's some kind of unfortunate incident between the two parties. One of them gets hurt, and the court says, well, you hurt your wife or you hurt your husband. And for that, you are going to need to pay him or her 200,000 rands. That 200,000 rands will not be added into the pot. That is to be kept separately. Out of community of property is probably the simplest. There is no pot. If it's on your name, it's on your name. Of course, this does leave some questions. I mean, obviously, during the marriage, you know, there may be situations where one party actually did contribute more than the other. And this is fantastic for mediators, because we don't need to strictly apply each of these rules the same way that, for instance, an attorney might in court. Whatever is fair to the parties is fair to them. As long as it's within the boundaries of the law, that's fine. They can basically do what they want. So regardless of which marital property regime the parties are married under, they have complete freedom to make their own decisions as long as both of them agree to it. Okay. Moving on to number 3, out of community of property, subject to the accrual system before 1st of November 1984. Any assets or liabilities that the parties got or got themselves into before the marriage is necessarily excluded from the accrual. The only thing that's going to be considered is whatever assets or liabilities they acquired during the time that they were married. Okay. Now we're going to get to the accrual calculation. Don't stress too much about it. I know it sounds complex, but it's actually very, very, very simple. All that you need to do is to apply the formula. After the 1st of November 1984, it's going to look exactly the same. However, now we have the antenuptial contract. And what the antenuptial contract does is it specifies, let's say for instance, party A owns a house, a car, and a whatever, and party B owns another house and a car and a whatever, and they say, but listen, we're going to exclude this. Well, it's as simple as that. Everything except what the parties have specifically stated to be excluded goes into a kind of imaginary pot. We're not going to call it a joint estate because it's not a joint estate. However, it is still a pot. It does the same thing, and we're going to split that pot. So we'll get to these. Lastly, on to a common law marriage. Now, as you probably know from the Fundamentals of SA Family Law module, there is no such thing as a common law marriage. There is no way that these parties can claim anything from each other unless we are talking about a universal partnership. And that is a completely different concept altogether.